Greetings, class. This particular lecture will be on the hard drives and server storage. So the question is asking about SSDs and other drives and the differences and the advantages. So I'm going to quickly go over that. First, we're going to talk about the platter drive. So these were the older drives. They're still being used today. A majority of the um, network area storages, which is a SAN or pools of storage, using these types of drives because they're still inexpensive to SSDs when you're buying them in volume. So the old drives or the platter drives spin at a certain revolution per minute. That's one spin of this platter. And the higher the revolutions per minute, the better performance that you'll have on that drive. So you'll see a lot of them that'll say like 7,200K RPM, 1 terabyte, 7,200, or 15K SAS, or 7,200 SATA, or so that's the SATA or the SAS is the connection of the drive right here on the screen. And then the RPMs is the quicker this spins around, this platter spins around, right? So usually the good server performance is hitting about 15K SAS. That's the best performance in those areas. So um, they do use 10K SAS or 7200, but 15K SAS generally helps the speed of the PC. So when a user goes to access a file share, they'll feel the difference between a 7200K hard drive or a 15K SAS. So the next one I want to talk about is this is a solid state drive. It has a SATA connection. The difference between the solid state drive and the platter drive is that there's no spinning platters, right? There's no more revolutions per minute or whatever. So this SSD drive, solid state drive, is limited by this connection. And this was just recently found out that it's going to be much faster than the platter drives. However, it's limited by this SATA connection, right? It can only go as fast as that SATA connection can go. So the newest thing on the market now is SSDs called NVMe, non-volatile memory. The SSD has a PCI Express connection and not a SATA connection here. So this although there's no revolutions per minute and it's faster than the platter, was limited by this connection. And now a PCI Express, which is the same thing that your network cards get, can get up to the limitations of that PCI Express card input. So I think a 1 gig, or sometimes there's 10 gig PCI Express on the motherboard. So this is a much faster drive. It's generally newer. They're relatively cheap, probably the same price as this SSD. But when you're buying in bulk again, it's not. It gets very expensive versus the platter. So I wanted to explain the quick difference between those. And I wanted to go over the server drive or the server capacity of storage. And I'm briefly going to use this picture. I'm going to explain what each one is. We're going to call these here hard drives. So these are hard drives, right? We're going to call this a switch. Okay, so this is a switch. And we're going to call these over here servers. So generally a server will have some local hard drives on it, and you'll set it up in a RAID, redundancy array of independent disks, a RAID, and there's different numbers of RAID. And generally the most popular is RAID 1 or 10. What RAID 1 does is it takes one disk and it mirrors it to the other disk. So let's say we have this server here and we're setting up a RAID 1. And we're going to go ahead and set that up. We have 2 disks in RAID 1, and we're going to use a hot spare, right? So we have this third one that doesn't really matter. It's not operating, it's just a hot spare. So if this disk breaks, the server is still available based on the copying. It's an exact copy or mirror. So there's no loss of data. And then you can take that hot spare and replace it with that broken one, or you could have some on the shelf and replace that drive that went down to where there's no, and you can do that while it's on. So there's no performance lost whatsoever. So you could set that up on your local storage. However, nowadays with the virtual growth, here's the current setup. So we're going to say this is server one, and this server one is going to be a VM host, a virtual machine host, right? So we're going to load this server with a whole bunch of CPU and RAM and make it very, very strong, right? Drive capacity doesn't matter on that host. We're loading it up with CPU RAM. We're going to call this VM host 1, and then we're going to have the same thing over here, and we're going to call this one VM host 2, right? So the purpose of the host is to put other virtual machines on it. So it's a physical server that's going to host other virtual servers. So inside of it, you can put virtual machine 1, 2, 3, 4, server 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are, again, are loaded up with RAM and CPU so that when you create your virtual servers inside of it, you can allocate some resources to it. You have 2 of them because there is some sort of virtual migration to where if this host breaks down in the middle of the day, the virtual servers on that host will automatically migrate over to this host, right? So you need resources available to carry both loads at the same time. So then what people are doing with the storage is they use what's called a network area storage or a SAN, to where the server is then connected to a switch, and this is not to get a network connection, but to get an iSCSI connection, and that is then connected to that SAN where these hard drives are, right? So we have, and that's occurring with both servers, right? So the other server is connected to that switch. This switch is not, again, it's not connected to get an internet connection or any other connection. It's simply connecting the virtual machines or the hosts to a switch to this array of disks. Okay, so that means both of these servers have shared storage, right? The storage is on this device, right, that has this connection, right? And then when you create the virtual machines on this host, they're actually being created on this hard drive storage system and not on the local server, operating system or drives. The only thing you're putting on that local drive is the operating system that runs whatever virtualization you're going to use, and then every other thing is on these hard drives. So again, server A goes down, it's able to migrate to server B or host 2. Okay, so I just wanted to go over that, and there's different types of RAID that you could use: RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID. Just take a look at some of those RAIDs, because those will be important later on when you're in the industry, or if you're in the industry, you should understand that. Finally, what I want to talk about is on the server itself, you can create a storage pool, and then you could attach physical disks to that storage pool and then create a virtual disk, right? So the same way in which we're doing on the PowerPoint slide, we could also do on the local storage itself. The disadvantage is it's only going to apply to the server. So if you have a virtual environment and you have 2 hosts, there's no way to migrate servers from host A to host B, or files in that manner, on this server to another server. Okay, folks, I just wanted to go over that and let you know the difference between those drives and a little bit about server storage. Okay, good luck.